So if you have a vision of what the world could be, how do you begin to scale it? Well, one way is to really embed it deeply into your organization. And often that means organizational change. So to talk about what this looks like, scale and change in a very global organization, I'm very pleased to welcome Chris Librie, who is the Senior Director of Strategy and Communications at HP. Chris, join us.
Thank you. And after hearing Michael's inspiring talk, I was reminded of some reading I did yesterday that the Monty Python troupe are going to be getting together to do some more live shows. And so in the immortal words of John Cleese, and now for something completely different. So it's a pleasure to be here talking about change management in a large organization, particularly to an audience of change managers like yourselves. I was going to say, it's almost like bringing sunshine to California, but given the weather that we've had the last couple of days, maybe that's not the best analogy. I'm Chris Librie, and I lead strategy and communications for HP Corporate Affairs. And we have two roles in the organization. One is to drive the story and the messaging and the strategy around what HP is doing in corporate responsibility. But the other is also to activate that program with social innovation projects that have helped drive HP's reputation for many, many years. And it's great to be here as a representative. It's an honor, really, to be able to represent the work of my team, but also other teams within the organization. As many of you know, as early as 1947, David Packard said, "The betterment of society is not a job to be left to a few. It's a responsibility to be shared by all." And this was a visionary statement for a time when Silicon Valley was still just farms and fruit trees. And for the 6 decades since 1947, HP has dedicated resources and expertise to driving environmental and social innovation projects. So we've had a positive impact on lives around the world, whether it's through recycling 2 billion pounds of e-waste, or reducing by 20% the carbon emissions of our own operations, which we've done over the last 6 years, or in this case, social innovation programs like bringing faster diagnosis of HIV in infants in Africa, using our technology to speed up the time between testing and diagnosis so that intervention can be made, successful intervention, with antiretroviral drugs. These are all things that we've been able to achieve over the past years and decades. But really, it wasn't until we started to think about social innovation holistically, until we started to look at all the aspects of the triple bottom line, human, economic, and environmental progress together, that we really started to gain traction. And this is what we call living progress. This is our vision for how to move the company forward, is to consider all 3 legs of the stool in everything we do. This is the way that we're going to be able to drive HP talent and technology to help improve lives, but not only that, to actually address society's issues. So let me tell you a little story, and then I'll explain how we bring this to life. About 10 years ago, an epidemic struck Southeast China. It was severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, as it became known. And clearly, this was a tragedy for all the people who were affected. It became a global health crisis, for those of you who remember it. And that was certainly a significant event for us at HP, because internally, it inspired us to start looking at the issue of overconcentration of our labor on the east coast of China. This crowding issue on the east coast of China really started getting us concerned, initially from a disease perspective, but then increasingly from other perspectives as well. We felt the crowding and too many people in one place was not only a risk to our business, but it was a risk to them. We were quite aware of the stress that this was causing workers, having to commute from central China, in many cases, to the East Coast. And we really wanted to see what we could do to better their lives. How could we address this issue in a constructive way? So we began working with the government of China on setting up a new manufacturing center in Chongqing, which is quite a number of miles west. And this enabled us to do a couple of things. Number one, it brought the factories to where the workers lived, so we eliminated that commuting issue. It also helped us to disperse the concentration of workers on the East Coast. And then, in addition to all that, it meant that we were starting to create a completely different culture for the workers who could stay in their own native culture closer to home. They were able to work in their own dialect and even enjoy their own cuisine. And we began to call this strategy Go West. We're incredibly creative in our naming process. So clearly, a big impact on human progress. But also, in moving west, we were able to create jobs. So jobs and commerce in Chongqing were energized by the presence of HP's supply chain, which is the largest in the IT world. In addition to that, and just to show that we're not completely altruistic, we also were able to improve our operating margins. And so HP was able to create economic progress. But what really turned the tide for me, particularly with Go West, was that we were able to also drive environmental progress. You see, by moving west to Chongqing, we cut ourselves off from the sea lines, from ocean freight that was commonplace on the east coast of China. And so HP had to innovate to create a rail line from Chongqing to Germany so that we could ship our products directly there over the Trans-Siberia Railway. This is a real breakthrough for us, not only in terms of efficiency and speed, but also in terms of the carbon footprint of our shipments. Rail freight is much more efficient in terms of carbon impact than even ocean freight, never mind air freight. So you can see how looking at things holistically, starting with human progress, moving to economic, and then environmental progress, HP was able to make quite significant and sustainable impact on living progress. Another issue that we're focusing on in the same way is climate change. And I can see many of you are all either connected online. We've talked about that a lot, the computing power that we have in the front row, or any row in this room. But we're all dependent on the cloud for our connectivity and even for our entertainment. And that is leading to incredible demand for data. And as that demand multiplies, the current styles of IT, the basic infrastructure of data centers, networking, and storage have to be reconsidered because those data needs are multiplying all the time. And in fact, they're growing at such a rate that we can see a point at which being able to handle the data needs is not going to be a sustainable solution. So you've probably heard some quotes about these data before, but the fact is that in 2 days, we produce more data as a group of people than in all of human history before 2003. It's mind-boggling how quickly that's growing. And being able to do that with a current approach is not going to work. As we think forward, one of the things that really struck me is that of the top countries in the world in terms of energy consumption, the 5th largest is actually the public cloud. So it really puts into perspective just how serious an issue this is likely to become. Indeed, if we reduced the public cloud by half in terms of its energy consumption, it would be enough to power the United Kingdom, which would be a jolly good result. But on top of that, in order to meet the needs, the projected needs that we can see moving out into the future, we're going to need to spend $10 to $20 billion on new data centers. And these data centers are going to need to take the space of 200 football fields. We're going to need 10 power plants to be able to supply the projected need for data over the next few years. And in order to offset that carbon, we'd need to grow 3 million acres of forest to help sequester it. I mean, it really just does not add up to a sustainable solution. So we really had to change the paradigm about how we work. And instead of thinking about football field size space for data centers, we needed to think smaller than a football. So let me show you Moonshot. This is HP Moonshot. It's a new server architecture, and I actually have an example of it here. And Moonshot is designed to work with web-based applications, so it takes out the excess computing power that is not required for other applications. But it also leverages the chipset that you'd find in your smartphone or your tablet. So those chips are much more efficient. They run cooler. They're much more energy efficient overall. And then we can fit 45 of these into the size of a standard server chassis. And they share cooling and networking efficiency. And as a result of that, Moonshot is 89%, up to 89% more energy efficient than a standard server for the same computing power. It's 80% less space intensive. And on top of that, it costs 77% less. So we're really proud of Moonshot and the technology that we've been able to build around it. And it's the beginning of many things to come from HP in terms of improving the energy efficiency of the cloud. So clearly, we've made environmental progress through Moonshot. But I think what's even more important is that by being able to bring the cloud more efficiently to more people, we can help drive economic progress, because we're all dependent on connectivity for our economic effectiveness. And then, while there are certain uses of social media that I'm not sure qualify as human progress, what does the fox say, anyone? I do think that by being able to aggregate big data efficiently through technology like Moonshot, we're going to be able to start to leverage big data on health and education issues. And already, HP is using the power of our ability to reach people with health care on the ground in order to aggregate big data ethically, of course, but also to be able to help anticipate the next epidemic or SARS. So we come full circle. So clearly, environmental progress has led to economic progress, and in this case now, human progress, which we really call moving forward on living progress. So from the beginning, as you saw, HP has been working to drive not only great new products, but also to have a positive impact on people's lives and livelihoods. And I'm confident that we will continue to do that as we move forward. But it's only that we can do that through looking at problems holistically and bringing the power of the IT technology and talent to bear on society's biggest issues. So we know society has some big issues, and I've touched on a couple of them: climate change and unemployment. And I'm really excited about the ability of HP and other technology companies to be able to drive true change that will help have a positive impact on these things. As I said, it's only by thinking holistically through the three legs of sustainability: human, economic, and environmental progress, that we can truly make living progress that's sustainable for a period of time. And I'm really excited about where HP is going on this journey. I'd love to engage with all of you about how we can all work together to do that in the future. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.